hockey fans. The Minnesota Hockey Connection Show is on the air. We're at downtown Duluth in City Hall, PACT-TV Studios. It's Tuesday, and it's the 29th of April. Boy, time is going fast. Hey, I got a Minnesota Wild new vice president of the foundation and community relations, Mike Snee, on the show. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Jerry. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah. Hey, we've been talking for about 20 years, and you're a Duluth East boy. Grew up in Duluth.
Yeah, I grew up in Lakeside. As a kid, I played every sport possible and spent a lot of my time at Portman, playing hockey in the winter and baseball in the summer, and left Duluth after graduating from Duluth East in 1987, but still consider it home.
Right. Portman, that was a great program out there over the years, last 60 years. I
actually never played hockey for Portman, but I played hockey at Portman all the time, but my organized winter sport was basketball, so I played basketball at Lakeside, and there was a social studies teacher there named Mr. Intihar who ran this really cool basketball program at Lakeside, but he was also a huge hockey fan, so I think it's something special about growing up in Duluth. All of my basketball buddies are also big-time hockey players, and it was in part because Mr. Intihar, he loved basketball, but he also loved hockey, and it was just such a magical, healthy time to grow up as a kid loving sports.
Right. Always outside. You were a rink rat.
Oh my gosh, that's all we played. If Portman had ice, we were playing pickup hockey, and if Portman didn't have ice in the fall or spring, we were playing boot hockey somewhere. We played a lot of boot hockey at Longview. We played a lot of boot hockey on Dodge Street. I mean, just great memories of sports every single day. Yeah,
my grandma lived out there on 50th and about a half a block from the church, St. Michael's Church. And she went there every day. But yeah, Lakeside's a nice little town for a nice little area of Duluth where the families and that. So, hey, moving on, Duluth East. Boy, there's a lot of big hockey people that really came out of the East. Like you've been head of the director of Minnesota Hockey, College Hockey Inc. Mike Kemp, he was athletic director and coach of the men's hockey team at Omaha Mavericks. We got players, Sean Hill and Derek Forberg, Dom Toninato, even Fairchild was out there playing pro hockey out of Duluth East. And Mike Randolph, he coached there for over 30 years. So Duluth East, and Mike Randolph, he has the record now in coaching. So Duluth East has brought out a lot of good hockey people in one way or the other.
Well, I have been fortunate that my career has pretty much been in hockey, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's been good to me. But zero of my hockey was on the ice, other than like I said, the hours of pickup hockey. But I didn't play for East. Baseball was actually my sport at East, and loved that. But you're right, the Duluth East has long had a great hockey tradition, as has many of the schools up in northeastern Minnesota. It was really fun this year on the boys' side to see schools like Rock Ridge and Cloquet and Hibbing really bubble back up and have great seasons. I hope that's a thing that a sign of what it's going to be like the next decade. Just seeing how competitive northeastern Minnesota hockey is going to be.
Right, Northern hockey. It was the best in my time. But what year did you graduate from Duluth East?
1987.
Oh, so you're right there at Sean Hill, right?
Did he? I believe he was 88 or 89. Yeah, he
88
was
probably.
A year or two younger than me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, and then you went to St. Thomas, and then you worked for the North Stars, then the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, don't forget the Minnesota Moose in there.
Oh yeah, I remember them.
Yeah. I worked for the Moose for 2 years, but yeah, when I started, pretty much everybody was using a wood stick still, and some of the players even had summer jobs so that's how old I am. That's how long ago I got started.
Well, you're not as old as me. But the job that I'm really interested in was when you first got the Minnesota Hockey director job. What was that like? This is back, 15 years ago or more, right?
Yeah, I started in 2008. So you somewhat just rattled off every employer I had for the start of my working career, from the North Stars to the Minnesota Moose, and then a super fun run for a decade with the Minnesota Wild. I was fortunate to be hired by them 2.5 years before they even started. And so we were just this small group and created an NHL team out of scratch, and it was fun, and I learned a lot and got a chance to work with some pretty impactful people. And then also in there, actually should note that I had a 2-year job at the Minnesota Timberwolves, which was pretty impactful on me too. Worked with a lot of good people there and had a lot of fun working for the Timberwolves, even though the 2 seasons I worked for the Timberwolves, they won a combined 29 games. So it was the J.R. Ryder, Christian Laettner era. But anyway, that was what I did for all those things for the first 15 years after I graduated from St. Thomas, and enjoyed it, and I didn't think deeply about any of it. Just was really having a good time, calling that my job. And then I got this role at Minnesota Hockey to be the executive director. Minnesota Hockey is the governing body for youth and amateur hockey in Minnesota. And I have to say that what I got from that role was not what I expected to get. I gained an appreciation for how kids in Minnesota play hockey, for how families in Minnesota are allowed to have their kids play hockey, and for this phrase that some people use called community hockey. I use it all the time. But it's this kind of magical, unintentional combination of all of these youth hockey associations throughout the state. There's about 130 of them. And then high school hockey programs throughout the state. There's about 135 or 140 boys varsity programs. I think there's about 120 girls varsity programs. And then really what I got the appreciation for was how our state publicly invests in ice arenas across the entire state, from corner to corner. So many communities, the ice arena is such an important building in that community, and it's meant to serve the community. It's not a business. It's part of the community, no different than the high school football field or the playground or the community pool. And it's pretty special and unique to Minnesota. That's outside of North Dakota is similar, Western Wisconsin is similar, but for the most part, everywhere else in our country, ice arenas are private, and from that comes privatized youth hockey clubs, junior teams, academies, pay-to-play teams. And because of that, the sport's very expensive, not very accessible, and therefore it becomes a niche sport. It's not a meaningful part of the community like it is in Minnesota. So I would say that I went through a bit of what would I say? Just my mindset really changed in 2008 when I took that job with Minnesota Hockey, and then ever since then, I just appreciated and become a very vocal advocate for how hockey is done in Minnesota. And I want to make sure that we not only that we preserve community hockey, but we make it even better if possible.
At Minnesota Hockey, do you work with high schools too?
At Minnesota Hockey, in an indirect way, mainly through the spring high performance programs and the fall high performance programs. So that's done through with the high school players. And then also Minnesota Hockey has thriving junior gold hockey. But for the most part, Minnesota Hockey is overseeing the youth and the girls. So the Mite, Squirt, Pee Wee, Bantam, the 8U, 10U, 12U, 15U.
Right. But I was thinking the other day when they went through all the state tournaments last month, and boy, Duluth Association is a very unique association because it seems like they have associations inside the associations, and that can get a lot of discussion a lot of times on events.
I'm in the Twin Cities now and have been ever since I went away to college. Been a Twin Cities resident, and when you take the teams that I coach, and I've been a coach in youth hockey for 20 years, and I've had 2 kids play hockey, so I've been to Duluth for probably literally 15 tournaments. And Twin Cities families just love Duluth. They love the Heritage Center, Amsoil Arena. They find Freiburger charming, which I find it charming. I'm sure people in Duluth there are some that don't anymore, but they find Freiburg charming. And then what they really love is just driving by the outdoor rinks. And I make a point to try to take them to Portman or to Glen Avon, or of course you see Woodland if you're playing at Freiburg.
Right.
And I've talked to some Duluth people that aren't. I don't know. They're maybe not as fond as that, but if you step back and look at how just accessible the sport of hockey is in the city of Duluth, and how much the community invests in the game, they make it local. And if you really put some deep thought into it, there are kids in Duluth playing hockey that would not be hockey players pretty much anywhere else in the country because they just couldn't be, whether it's the cost, the affordability, the location of the rink. How just kind of like charming and approachable it looks. You drive by some of these. I always, like, as I'd walk to Portman as a kid, the lights are obviously on at night, and you can start to see that a block away, and you can hear the pucks hitting the boards a block away. It's like this inviting beacon, Well, if you don't have that, if all your hockey's played indoors, I'm sorry, but an indoor ice arena from the outside just doesn't look as inviting and as attractive. I would never say hockey in Minnesota or hockey in Duluth is perfect, but it's so much better than anywhere else. I'm going to butcher this cliche, but people say, like, democracy is the worst form of government, with the exception of every other form of government ever tried. And I would, as somebody who's kind of looks for the negatives and not the positives. Yeah, the way they play hockey in Duluth is probably the worst way to play hockey, with the exception of the way they play hockey everywhere else. It's just it's so magical, and so and now that as I age and as I find out through my employment since 2008 what hockey looks like elsewhere for kids and families, man, we're lucky to have what we have in Minnesota. Again, it's not perfect, but it is special.
Well, then you had another Duluth East guy that took over your job after you left to go to College Hockey Inc., Glenn Andreessen. Did you know him before, way back in high school or anything? Or?
Well, I'm 10 years older than him.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so I knew his older sister who went to high school when I was in high school, but didn't really know him, but got to know him really well, worked closely with him, and as you said, he became the executive director at Minnesota Hockey after I left, and now he's doing really well as overseeing the business operations of the Minnesota Frost. So, okay. Yeah, so he's doing well himself.
Okay, then you went to College Hockey Inc., and I think you really liked this job and getting kids from Minnesota into college and new colleges to start D1 programs. Tell us a little bit about that job.
College Hockey Inc. is a nonprofit behind-the-scenes organization. So a lot of people, a lot of hockey people probably don't know what College Hockey Inc. is, and that's expected. That's what I would think. What I would say, it's an advocacy organization for NCAA Division I men's and women's hockey. On the men's side, at one time, not too long ago, it really served younger players, like the 14 to 17-year-old player and their parents, to make sure they knew what they could and couldn't do to remain eligible for college hockey. That is much less of a topic here in Minnesota, because so many Minnesotans, almost every Minnesota hockey player wants to play college hockey. But in other parts of the United States and in Canada, some kids had more of a desire to play major junior hockey. In Canada, which up until a year ago, you would lose your eligibility to play college hockey if you played major junior hockey. So a primary role of College Hockey Inc. was, and I emphasize was, to educate young players on just how good college hockey was and how to stay eligible for college hockey. Now, last year, the rule changed, and major junior players in Canada are now eligible for college hockey, just like all other junior hockey players, USHL, North American Hockey League, BCHL. Some junior leagues used to be eligible, or I shouldn't say used to, some junior leagues were eligible for college hockey. Other junior leagues, the three major junior leagues, were not eligible. Now, all of junior hockey is eligible for college hockey. So the role of College Hockey Inc. now has shifted a little bit to make sure that young players, boys and girls, again in that kind of that 14 to 16-year-old sweet spot, are aware of what they need to do academically to play college hockey. But College Hockey Inc. also does some other behind-the-scenes stuff, most notably working with universities that are interested in adding women's or men's or both, ideally both, college hockey. So that was really a fun project to work on some schools. We worked with State, we worked with Augustana, we worked with Delaware, which will be adding women's hockey this fall, and some other schools as well. So that was my time at College Hockey Inc. I was there for 12 years, and to kind of stick with my theme about my appreciation for Minnesota, working at College Hockey Inc. revealed what youth hockey looks like throughout the hockey playing world, but really in North America, and furthered my appreciation for what we have in Minnesota.
Do you think there's going to be a lot more D1 hockey programs in the next 10 years?
I wouldn't say a lot more. No, I think there might be some more. But one of the reasons why I think it was needed for College Hockey Inc. to be an advocate for adding college hockey is, hockey is a challenging sport relative to other sports. It requires a very unique facility. It's a facility that's expensive. It's an expensive sport to operate equipment-wise. To many still, it's not a sport people are comfortable with. If you didn't grow up with it, it's like, what is that equipment? What does that cost? How do they do that? Where conversely, take a sport like lacrosse or take men's volleyball, or even video games. Sports or activities that are also growing in popularity. Women's touch football or flag football, women's flag football. It's a lot easier to add those sports. It's certainly a lot cheaper, but if you want to add men's volleyball, you already have a gym space. If you want to add women's flag football, you already have a football field. If you want to add lacrosse, you probably already have a field. You might just need to stripe it differently, okay? Or if you decide, let's build our own lacrosse field, that's not that expensive relative to building an arena. So to grow hockey, you need to be very, just more deliberate about how to do it, about the approach. And I think that's where College Hockey Inc. really struck a niche, was out there finding schools that maybe had access to an existing facility, like Delaware. Delaware had access to an arena. We cold called Delaware and built a relationship with them on the values of adding hockey, and they had decided that they're going to add women's hockey. They'll start playing in this upcoming season. Or in Augustana, had a relationship with somebody who could help them pay for that necessary arena, and then also realize, as a Division II athletics institution, you can have one signature sport, like Minnesota Duluth does. One sport you play at the Division I level, one sport where your men's and women's teams goes out and competes with and beats schools at the profile of Minnesota and Wisconsin. You can have that sport. You don't have to elevate all of your athletics departments to have that opportunity. And hockey's the only sport where you can do that. You can't choose to just have Division I basketball. You can't choose to just have Division I volleyball, but you can have just Division I hockey if you're a Division II school like Minnesota Duluth or Augustana. So College Hockey Inc. had that objective of really being, I would call like a sales organization trying to grow college hockey.
Okay, we're talking Mike Snee, Vice President of the Minnesota Wild Foundation and Community Relations. Mike, you were talking about when you grew up, you played a lot of different sports, and so did I when I grew up. Nowadays, they have these camps and training all year round in Minnesota. What do you think we should go back to trying to get these kids to play different sports?
Well, I'm realistic. When you and I were, playing pickup pond hockey at Portman, or you were playing street hockey, or you were at, we we used to play tons and tons of pickup baseball at the big field by Good Shepherd Church on 45th Avenue East in Lakeside. The whole time we were doing that, 0 people were making money off of it. 0 people were making money off of my parents when I was playing one-on-one basketball in someone's driveway. And I think what's happened is youth sports has become it's such a thriving industry because people have realized that there's a segment of parent that we can convince that this is better for their kid if you pay me to either put your kid on some select team, or you pay me to give your kids individual instructions, or you pay me to be your kid's shooting coach, or your kid's inside edge coach, or your kid's outside edge coach. And so the nature of a kid playing a sport has changed from being, play and being managed by the kid to being overseen by the parent and then handed off to somebody making money at it. So, do I think it'd be healthier for the game? Do I think it'd be healthier for the kids? Absolutely. Am I realistic? Do I realistically think it will happen? No, because it would require people that currently that's how they make their living. It would require them to close their businesses, and they're not going to do that.
Going back to the major juniors, where they can come in and play college hockey now. I've been talking to you and a lot of other people, and everyone has a little hesitation what's going to happen. They don't know, but they think it's not going to help community hockey in Minnesota. It's not going to help the North American Hockey League and the United States Hockey League and even maybe college hockey. Who knows? But what do you think?
That's a good question. We could talk for an hour about what'll happen. I mean, in essence, just to simplify what's happening here is there's countless junior hockey leagues. All of those leagues maintained college eligibility for their players except 3. And now those 3 junior hockey leagues will have college eligibility. So all of junior hockey will have college eligibility. The reality is there's not much difference between the OHL and the USHL. I mean, the kids have pretty much the identical experience. They play 70 games. They wear half shields. They live in billets homes. They go to school online. They could be traded. It's really identical. There's not much difference between playing for Muskegon and playing for Saginaw, even though one's in the USHL and one's in the OHL. So I think people overthink like the big picture of it. It just means there's more players eligible now than there were before, and all junior leagues are eligible instead of some being eligible and some not being eligible. The big outcome, I do think what will happen is because most major junior players are Canadian, you will see college hockey become more Canadian because suddenly there are 2,000 players eligible now that weren't eligible, and 90% of those players are Canadian. Many of those players aren't skilled enough to play Division I hockey, but many of them are. And of those that are skilled enough to play Division I hockey, some of them, probably most of them, are going to be interested in college hockey. So I think you will see American players being displaced by Canadian players for sure. Some people think that's an issue, others don't. Just depends on who you ask. And then from the Minnesota standpoint, I absolutely think Minnesota and those that appreciate, love, and realize that community hockey is absolutely the best delivery model of hockey, we need to be even more aware, more deliberate, more with intent on ensuring that all of our families know how good community and high school hockey is, because some don't. But more importantly, what happens, or not more importantly, but is that the recruiting industry of youth hockey, which is pretty much everywhere outside of Minnesota, where kids play hockey for clubs, they play hockey for academies, they play hockey for junior teams. All of that is heavily recruiting based. And now they've just got more of that because the CHL teams are eligible. So there's just more businesses out there that their business is to recruit aspirational hockey players. And when you come into Minnesota, how you recruit that is you tell that kid from Hermantown or Grand Rapids that, you're going to play a national schedule, you're going to get more exposure or whatever their sales pitch is. And their sales pitch is usually to compare it to what their current alternative is, which is community hockey in Minnesota, even though all of the statistics clearly demonstrate that the Minnesota community model outperforms hockey elsewhere. Or playing junior hockey, which is pretty much a necessity now, is to play junior hockey at the right age. Going to junior hockey early, again, if you look at the statistics, if you do the work and the research, you'd be very hard-pressed to defend a decision to go to junior hockey young, okay? All you do is add more time to your junior hockey career. You don't accelerate anything. And in fact, you run a risk of having that be kind of like where things start to decline in your hockey career. But nevertheless, that is going to be the reality, is there will be more recruiting against the community model in Minnesota. So I agree with your statement that I think Minnesota, the leaders of hockey in Minnesota, need to be even more aware and more vocal, sharing facts and information about why the community hockey model is best for every kid, 18 and under.
Well, let's talk 2 minutes on what you do as your job now as Minnesota Wild head of the foundation and community relations.
So, yeah, it's a new role, and we started a new initiative called Skating Forward. And that is just to do almost everything we've just talked about, which is to preserve, strengthen, and celebrate community hockey in Minnesota. I give tons of credit to the Minnesota Wild leadership, from owner Craig Leopold, President Matt Baca on down, for recognizing how special community hockey is. And, community hockey is what makes the state of hockey real. And then I would add to that, the soul of the state of hockey is not in the metro area. It's outside of the metro area, and in particular in northern Minnesota. That's where you really feel how important hockey is to Minnesota. I mean, I just, go to a Grand Rapids Hermantown game, go to a Roseau War Road game. I was fortunate to be at a section final for watching the Proctor Hermantown girls team play a game. And the atmosphere it's like nowhere else in the country. And I certainly didn't realize that up until 2008. And now that I do, I'm very thankful that the Minnesota Wild realize it. They want to preserve that. They want to make sure that our hockey doesn't change from being so community focused to becoming so commercially focused. It's more commercially focused than it ever has been, but it still is very much community focused. You play for your youth association, then you play for your high school, and you play in a rink that is publicly invested in, just like Virginia's brand new rink, just like Proctor's brand new rink. Grand Rapids rink just had a significant reinvestment into it. That we want to maintain and preserve that culture. And then while we're at it, let's improve it, because it's not perfect. Let's improve it. Let's get more kids playing hockey. Let's make our community hockey even better. But then the third piece, we say let's celebrate it. What we really need to do is we need to be more vocal about it. We need to make sure that these facts are out there so that people realize that playing for sending your 14-year-old to a AAA team on Long Island or in, South Dakota or suburban Detroit is actually selling your kids' hockey development short. It's not the best thing for their hockey development. It certainly is not the best thing big picture wise for hockey in Minnesota. So from a big picture standpoint, we need to make sure that as much as possible, people realize how wonderful community hockey is for a young person's hockey development, but also just for the culture of the sport in our state. And then I'll end this by saying, if we were to commercialize hockey in Minnesota like the rest of the country, the first part of Minnesota that would suffer is small town Minnesota, because an ice arena, if it were a business, it couldn't survive in Two Harbors or Moose Lake or places like that. If, like the rest of the country, ice arenas had to be a business, you'd have rinks in the Twin Cities, and you'd have a couple of rinks in Duluth, and probably a rink in Moorhead, and so on. But you would no longer have a rink in Moose Lake. You'd no longer have a rink in Two Harbors. You'd no longer have rinks in communities like that. And over a period of time, probably take a generation, rinks would close, hockey would go away, and and much hockey would go away, and the hockey that remains would be much less meaningful to the state, and it would be heavily concentrated on the large population areas. So I know that's a lot, but the point now here of skating forward and our new initiative with the Minnesota Wild is to preserve, strengthen, and celebrate community hockey in Minnesota.
Well, thank you, Mike Snee. And go Wild tonight and Thursday night, and the buzz is all over the state and all over the world, really, for Wild fans. So pretty excited to watch the game tonight. So thank you again, Mike, and we'll see you at the rink or someplace in hockey world. So thank you, PACT-TV Studios, and thank you, producers Liz, Sean, and Jim. And hey, we'll see you at the rink.